Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Unlimited. Today, we are talking about accessing the true power of gratitude beyond individualism. I realized when I was thinking what we're going to talk about today that I haven't done an episode on gratitude before. I know that I have woven it in. I know that it has been part of some of the previous episodes, but it's never had its own episode. So I figure it's about time that happens. And particularly given that it is a time where a lot of people are talking about being thankful and being grateful. And there's a lot of the kind of normative approach to gratitude that is very embedded in individualistic thinking. It's more of a mindset approach versus a collective approach. And given that the last episode where I interviewed Amina Chaudhry on belonging really brought forward to me that a lot of the issues that I have with gratitude when it comes to like tolerating things that maybe aren't things that we need to be tolerating, or bypassing real feelings and experiences that people are having by dismissing it with, oh, I'll be grateful you aren't, or be grateful you have, and that sort of thing. That really, just like belonging is an outside-in experience, you don't create belonging by yourself. Gratitude is also related to that. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about that relationship and how we can shift our understanding of gratitude to actually utilize it for what it's there for. And I mean what it's there for because it is part of our wiring. It's part of our natural way of engaging. It's part of our biology, just like belonging. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about basically what is gratitude, the biological purpose of gratitude, guilt versus responsibility, harmful uses of gratitude, hint they have a lot to do with individualism, and developing a true gratitude practice and what that looks like and how you might harness that, especially for the holiday season. Speaking of the holiday season, if you do have a particular situation that you are stressed out about, that you're not sure how you want to handle or how to show up in alignment with it, and would like a one-off session to really dig in and get some clarity, I am offering some special one-off sessions. I have limited availability for that because I got my own holiday busyness going on, but I wanted to make sure that you have that space of support should you desire it. So there will be a link in the show notes to that. Also, of course, if you are thinking ahead into 2024 and wanting to get some coaching to make sure that you have alignment and a plan and clarity around taking action into 2024, I'm happy to hop on a call to explore what coaching might look like for you. And finally, I am doing a workshop with Amina about making holiday magic, tools to stop tolerating and start transforming relationships, where we will be digging into some of the core tools to support yourself showing up in the holidays, holding to what your values are, what's really important to you, setting those boundaries, and supporting yourself emotionally to navigate the discomfort that can come along with boundary setting. So if that's of interest, there will be a link in the show notes to that. It is on Wednesday, December 13th at noon Central US time. So check the show notes for that. And now, without further ado, let's get started. Hey there, I'm Valerie Friedlander, Certified Life Business Alignment Coach, and this is Unlimited. This podcast bridges the individual and the societal, scientific and spiritual, positive and negative, nerdy and no, there's just a lot of nerdy. Come on board and let's unlock a life that's as badass as you are. Let's start with, what is gratitude? So I found a white paper prepared for the John Templeton Foundation by the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley called The Science of Gratitude. In this paper, they talk about the types of gratitude. Robert Emmons and Michael McCullough define gratitude as a two-step process. 1, recognizing that one has obtained a positive outcome, and 2, recognizing that there is an external source for this positive outcome. They also list that some psychologists further categorize gratitude into 3 types. There's gratitude as an affective trait, which is one's overall tendency to have a grateful disposition. A mood, so daily fluctuations in overall sense of gratitude, and an emotion, a more temporary feeling of gratitude that one may feel after receiving a gift or a favor from someone. So those are how they identify the types of gratitude. And you'll notice again that receipt of something coming from outside in, which is part of how I started kind of going, oh, that's like what Amina was saying about belonging. It's this outside in trigger of feeling, of experience. Of course, they talk about the benefits of gratitude. And this is one of the things that you commonly hear. People talk about the benefits of gratitude. So why you should be grateful, why you should have a gratitude practice. And one of the underlying things around people saying, well, be grateful that, and all of those sorts of things. Now, that's not to say that it isn't beneficial to be grateful. It's really more the approach and the way it's handled and the way we wield gratitude, as it were, essentially emphasizing the inside out experience rather than recognizing the outside in experience. But let's go ahead and take a minute to talk about the inside or individual benefits of gratitude that are so often touted and are quite real. So a lot of studies have examined possible connections between gratitude and various elements of psychological well-being. They see that the more grateful people are, the happier they are, the more satisfied they are with their life, the less materialistic, the less likely to suffer from burnout. It can have medical benefits as well. So more grateful cardiac patients reported better sleep, less fatigue, lower levels of cellular inflammation. And heart failure patients who kept a gratitude journal for 8 weeks were more grateful and had reduced signs of inflammation afterwards. On the psychological end, people experience less depression and feel more resilient after traumatic events when there's more gratitude present. People tend to be more generous, kind, and helpful the more gratitude they have in their life. And this relates to what they talk about as gratitude being a pro-social behavior. So the more gratitude, the more likely you are to engage with other people and be generous, kind, helpful toward others. So the more open, the more expansive, as it were. So what is pro-social? Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary defines pro-social as intended to help or benefit another person or group. So this really is about interaction. Now, when we talk about those benefits, a lot of times we're thinking, okay, this is something you should do. You should definitely practice gratitude because it will make you feel better. What isn't looked at in this is the environment, the space that we exist in. If you are in a psychologically safe environment, if there is belonging, or even that you have access to those spaces, there is a lot more ability to be open, to be expansive, to be receptive, because that's really what that open, expansive experience allows you to give to others, but it also allows you to receive. And that is a core component of gratitude. It's kind of this like dual dynamic. More gratitude means you're more open to receive. The more you receive, the more gratitude you can have. So it's really rooted, though, in this pro-social behavior. And they have some other things in that paper about the biological wiring and where they see it in other animals and other species, and how it helps in altruistic behavior. The willingness to give something, then someone who is received is more likely to give to others. And there's this sense of the kind of a symbiotic relationship. Now, when you live in an overly individualized society where a lot of our bases are around transactional relationships and exploitive relationships, you don't really have a lot of psychological safety or ability to be open and a lot of trust that there will be some reciprocation in that space. So naturally, we're going to be more closed off. It's going to be harder to access gratitude because, again, it's not really something that is an isolated thing. It's not just your solo mind setting. It is about the environment that you are in. And is there an exchange there? Is there safety in being open and giving and receiving? So let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the brain. The website NeuroHealth has an article titled "Neuroscience Reveals Gratitude Literally Rewires Your Brain to Be Happier." In this article, it talks about the chemicals and dynamics that are happening in the brain around gratitude. In a neurological experiment they list that was conducted by researchers at the University of California at Los Angeles, brain activity was measured using magnetic resonance imaging as subjects were induced to feel gratitude by receiving gifts. Again, this is an outside-in situation. The areas of the brain showing increased activity were the anterior cingulate cortex and medial prefrontal cortex, for those of you who like to really nerd out around brain science. Those are the parts of the brain that are associated with moral and social cognition, reward, empathy, and value judgment. So this brought forward the conclusion that the emotion of gratitude supports a positive and supportive attitude towards others and a feeling of relief from stressors. Gratitude also activates the hypothalamus with downstream effects on metabolism, stress, and various other behaviors. The hypothalamus is located at the base of the brain. It regulates hormones. It's responsible for many critical functions like body temperature, emotional responses, and survival functions like appetite and sleep. Also, one of the neurochemicals associated with parts of the brain affected by gratitude is dopamine, a pleasure hormone that you may have heard about. Now, I want to again highlight that this is about that pro-social behavior. I received something and that triggered gratitude. Now, of course, you can do a practice of gratitude that helps you access these parts of the brain. And that's part of what a gratitude practice is about, is tapping into those parts of the brain because it's activating those spaces. Just seeking gratitude does that. So you don't actually have to feel grateful to have a gratitude practice, to utilize gratitude as a practice. And that's one of the tools when it comes to gratitude that we kind of bypass some of the environmental challenges that we might have when it comes to that sense of gratitude and that safety and giving and receiving that altruistic pro-social behavior. When we lack that, we can tap into our brain and seek gratitude so that we can activate those hormones and get a similar response. This works, and it's harder to do when we don't have the environment. You have to lean on that a lot more. So this is where I often talk about gratitude becoming a way that we bypass actually looking at the things that we need to address. It's a way that we tolerate situations, environments, social systems that are harmful because, we can hack our brain. And then we do it to other people by encouraging them to hack their brain when maybe what they need is us to show up with pro-social behavior rather than emphasizing the individual. So I'm going to get back to this a little bit more in just a second, but I also want to pull in something that I talked about way at the beginning of when I started this podcast, and I did an episode on stress languages. And one of the resources I referenced is a talk by Kelly McGonigal on how to make stress your friend and the function of stress. And stress is supposed to help us engage something that we are dealing with. It's not meant to be there all the time. It is meant to be there to help us deal with a stressful situation, not like living in stressful situations, not living in a stressful environment. Short term, not long term. But what she talks about in this TED Talk is how when we experience stress, our brain releases cortisol, adrenaline, and oxytocin, which you might know as the cuddle hormone. This tells us to connect. So our stress resiliency is in connection. Now, I know I've talked about this a fair amount, so you may recognize that. And I want to tie it to gratitude, because if you look at the way our brain is wired and all of these different systems and triggers that get set off, like when we're in stress, our brain says connect. That ability, that space of connection, then allows us to receive, to have a space where we are safe enough to be open enough to receive and then have gratitude and then reciprocate. So we have this space, which I would tie to that space of belonging that Amina and I were talking about in the last episode. When we have belonging, we have more room for stress resilience. We have more room to express gratitude, to experience gratitude, and then to reciprocate and create more belonging and thus more gratitude in other people. These are pro-social functions. They are designed for us to connect. So rather than hacking our brain and making ourselves feel better in a brief period so that we can tolerate the amount of stress that we are under living in an over-individualized system that is full of systems of oppression, that we are then just tolerating and making ourselves be okay, well, we're running out of our ability to do that. One of the things I talk about is energy levels. I do something called the Energy Leadership Index Assessment, and there's a particular level that is level 3, which is basically pulling ourselves out of our stress response. And it's where we release the stress and get okay. I talk a lot more in depth about this and these different energy levels in the episode You're More Than Your Personality Test, which is like way at the beginning of when I started this podcast. But it'll also be in the show notes. And this level 3, where we're releasing what is called catabolic energy, the breaking down kind of energy, we're leaning into, okay, I can make this okay. I don't like the situation, but I can make it better. I can tolerate it. I can forgive. I can release and find a way to be okay. You might hear people talk about a silver lining. You might hear people talk about making lemonade out of lemons. This level is, I think, oftentimes where we're utilizing gratitude in an individualistic way. We're using it to get okay. So that can be beneficial, but is that really what it's meant for? Right? Like, is that really where it's supposed to be? So, okay, what happens when I have too many lemons and not enough sugar to make lemonade? Well, then I'm in my stress response again. Then I'm in my survival mode. And what do we have to help us pull out of this stress response, survival mode? Well, it's supposed to be connection, right? That's part of what our brain says to do. But if part of what's causing the stress is the lack of connection, the lack of support, so we have an overabundance of stress, all these lemons, not enough sugar, then what? It's very hard to tap into gratitude, and gratitude ends up being a Band-Aid instead of really creating change. really going, hey, there's an issue here, let's do something about it. Because how are we pro-social if we don't have the social? So let's talk about what that can look like in practice. How do we create spaces? Now, there's a lot more to look at when it comes to like belonging. How do we create spaces of belonging? Definitely go, if you haven't yet, listen to the episode where I talk with Amina, and then look into that, learn more about that. Because the thing is that when we're creating spaces of belonging, when we have spaces of non-belonging, a lot of times there's going to be greater discomfort before we feel that sense of belonging, that sense of connection. We have to get uncomfortable to actually deal with it. It's like when you have a cut and you need to heal it, you need to clean it out first. That can hurt. So thinking about it like that, a lot of times what can happen when we're thinking about gratitude is, well, I feel guilty for not being more grateful for all the things that I have. I feel guilty that I'm not experiencing what other people are experiencing. And oftentimes this is how we use gratitude in this individualistic way, is we create these hierarchies, which create a disconnection. Well, at least I'm not there. At least I'm not dealing with that. Or I feel bad that they're dealing with that and I'm not. And those sorts of things. The Dalai Lama and the Archbishop Desmond Tutu talk a little bit about this dynamic in the Book of Joy, which is a lovely book, and I definitely recommend it. But it's recognizing that we are one, that I could be there, that I am suffering and there are other people suffering. It's basically, again, tapping back into that connectedness. Instead of hierarchies of pain, of suffering, it's going, we are connected. And then leaning into that connection. So this is where instead of using gratitude as a way to assuage guilt or having it trigger guilt even, what if it created space for responsibility? For the ability to respond, to lean into the pro-social component. So I see that you are suffering, you are in pain, you are grieving, you are hurting, you are struggling. Rather than telling somebody, well, be grateful that you're here and not here, or be grateful that you have this, or think positive, or all those ways that we bypass the feelings that we label as negative feelings instead of honoring that space. If you have gratitude, if you can tap into your gratitude for being able to be there for that person, then what behaviors follow? If you have gratitude for what you have, how does that expand your sense of ability to show up for others? To create those spaces of belonging? Does it give you more resiliency to be able to be uncomfortable and show up and give? Because that's what gratitude is designed for. It's designed for us to be open and connect with each other. So if you have more access to gratitude than somebody else does, instead of encouraging them to individually tap into gratitude, what can you do to extend the expansiveness that your gratitude is giving you? Now, I'll go back to something I said early on. That does not necessarily mean that there will be receipt, because having the space for gratitude also means a space for receiving. So there does need to be some dynamic there. But if we can tap into it, if we have access to it, then that allows us to do something. Now, this is not a doing something with the expectation that we will have a return. Again, that taps into our programming around transactional relationships. This is, I have something to pour out of my cup, right? My cup is full because I can tap into that, because I have access to that. So I'm going to lean into this pro-social behavior from the full cup and pour out of my cup and allow some discomfort in myself because I have a full cup, or I have more in my cup, so I can pour out of my cup. Now, if someone has their hand over their cup, there's not a lot that you can do. However, that can be an invitation to think in a broader space, in a more communal way instead of another individual way, like one person to another person, but maybe it is more in a systems or institutions way. Taking a look at that, like instead of the guilt, instead of the hierarchical thinking when it comes to gratitude, what ways could you connect? Could you be of service? Could you lean into this being about connecting to other people, to something greater than yourself, like a community? So as I mentioned, the individualizing ways of using gratitude, the just be grateful, or aren't we glad that this didn't happen, or I'm sure that there will be something to be grateful for in this later on. Like all those ways that we kind of bypass the feelings that someone's having, those are harmful. So instead, be that space where you can hear someone's feelings and hold space for that. Instead of giving positive affirmations or positive words to try and make somebody feel better, be in that discomfort with them. Join them in a tangible action. So it's kind of that, hey, you don't tell somebody to pull themselves up by their bootstraps if they don't have boots. What could you do to help them have boots? If you think about gratitude like the bootstraps, if they don't have boots, no bootstraps. If you have that expansiveness, what can you do to help them get the boots? To give them the boots, to make boots accessible. So this is where we go into developing a gratitude practice. What does a gratitude practice look like when we think about it beyond just the individual, but also the collective? Gratitude, when you have it as a practice. And again, this isn't just about feeling grateful. This is about tapping into your brain. And I will say, I'll give you a little anecdote there. I did use this once when I was in an argument with my husband. I'd read an article, which I now cannot find, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would put it in the show notes. But I was having an argument with my husband around this time of year, actually. And we were in that stoic silence. We were just kind of irritated at each other. And I thought about this article that I'd read about tapping into gratitude rather than feeling it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to list all the things I'm grateful for right now. And either it'll make me feel better and I win, or it'll piss him off and I win because I'm pissed off. So I did. I out loud listed everything that I could think of that I could be grateful for. And then I said, your turn. And like the good sport that he is, he went ahead and listed all the things he was grateful for. And after that, we were able to find a solution to what we had been struggling with. We were able to look at it more clearly. So what using gratitude did was it brought us into the present moment and it helped us think more expansively. It gave us access to connection between each other and to ourselves and to a more expansive way of thinking. So if you have a gratitude practice, what that is doing is it's about helping you access more room, helping you connect to yourself, to another person, to the present moment, to the here and now. Gratitude is very tied to mindfulness. It's about being present. When you are present in this moment, you're not off in the future, you're not off in the past, and that allows you to be able to receive what someone else is giving you, to be able to hear yourself, to be able to hear another person, and to be able to show up to that relationship again and again, reminding you that gratitude is a pro-social behavior. So what this is doing is giving you space to connect. So it's a really helpful practice if you are feeling disconnected to tap into that, not as a way to obscure real things that are happening, real pain you're experiencing, to bypass discomfort, but as a way to think differently about it, to connect with others, to lean into the collective experience, to be able to show up differently in a relationship, to be able to articulate what you need, to be able to see possibilities, and recognizing that if this is hard and if this is a struggle, to look at what is that telling you? What are the spaces that you might need to seek out, might need support in creating? Because having those spaces where you can be expansive, where you can tap into social interaction, where there is psychological safety and belonging, then that allows more access to that gratitude practice, to the present being a place you'd actually want to be in. And that feels safe and not, well, when this happens, then, or I wish this hadn't happened, but in the present moment where you actually have the power of creation. There are lots of suggestions out there for a gratitude practice. So you're welcome to utilize any of those: mindfulness, gratitude, all of those things that help you become present. Some people like to write at the end of the day 3 things they're grateful for, just to tap into that. I like it in a moment where I'm feeling stuck to list a few things that I'm grateful for. You could do ABCs of gratitude, to think beyond the zoomed in, this is hard, this hurts, I'm activated in a way that I don't like, to be able to think broadly about, like, what do I need? Where could I go? What could I do? More expansive thinking. Who can I reach out to? So think about that in the practice of, how does this pertain to you and you being present, you being able to receive, and you being able to give? And then also, what does that look like in receiving and giving when it comes to gratitude? How does that gratitude, or how could that gratitude influence how you show up with others in a way that is expansive? How could you create a space of safety and belonging for others? And I will say right here, real quick, this is not about trying to control other people, trying to get them to be in a space that they are not in. It is not allowing other people to treat you like a doormat. It is about being true and present and connected. And not everyone is in a space where they can do that. So what does it look like to be lovingly detached, to be able to express care and hold that space without joining someone in the hole they're digging for themselves, or without enabling behavior that is harmful, those sorts of things. So gratitude is really not about making those things okay. It's about being present and connected. I recognize that there can be a lot of nuance and very particular things that you have in your life may influence how you engage and experience gratitude and what that looks like for you. If that's something you want support with, or if there's something else related to the holiday season that you are looking for support with, perhaps it is boundaries with family or boundaries with yourself and navigating time and money and all those fun things, I do have a one-off support session available to you to check out. Also, if you're thinking about the new year and wanting to get in alignment with your work and your whole life and all of the things, I have a free exploration session where we can chat about what coaching might look like for you. And then finally, reminder about the workshop with Amina on making holiday magic. All of the links for these things will be in the show notes, so I invite you to check them out. I wish you a beautiful heading into winter season, and I will talk to you all next time. Thanks for listening. I so appreciate you being here. If you got something out of today's episode, please share it. Leave me a review, take a screenshot, and post it on social with a shout out to me. Send it to a friend or, all of the above. Want to hang out more? Join me on Instagram. Or better yet, get on my mailing list to make sure you don't miss out on anything. And remember, your possibilities are as unlimited as you are. Allow yourself to shine, my friend. The world needs your light. See you next time.